Although I was born into a Christian family, my parents were open to my religious beliefs and allowed me the freedom of choice. Although I went to church every Sunday, church was not an interesting place for me and I failed to find a sense of belonging. Later, I rarely went to church. My parents understood my choice. This support and tolerance helped me develop the ability to think independently. 1988 was a life-changing year for me. Our neighborhood was struck by an unknown virus. The virus caused dehydration and vomiting, and many children had to be hospitalized. I remember that dozens of children had to stay in the hospital for treatment. Compared to the others, my condition was one of the most severe. My brother's condition was relatively mild and he went home after 3 days in the hospital. Due to the severity of my condition, I ended up being quarantined in a tent. I was not allowed to have contact with people from the outside world to avoid spreading the virus. There were 7 other patients in the quarantine tent. We all fell into a coma, and I became the worst of them. During the coma, my breathing stopped for close to 5 minutes and I was in a very critical condition. Fortunately, the paramedics quickly performed CPR on me. All of this was told to me by my parents. When I lost consciousness, I could feel something moving around me. Then he stopped next to my bed. I began to have a special perception and seemed to know that it was an angel. The feeling that this angel was here to help me was very reassuring. I felt the angel's hand pass through my body and it was a wonderful feeling. His hands were gentle and warm, as if they were transmitting a special energy. I felt a static-like sensation at the touch of his hand. The sensation was not painful, but rather comforting to me. I could feel this energy spreading throughout my body, bringing about a healing sensation. In that moment, time seemed to cease to matter. A nonverbal connection was established between me and the angels. After a while, I left my body. I felt myself being lifted out by a force. Here, I did not see bright lights or tunnels. I floated in the air, my soul free from the bonds of the ground. As I levitated, I saw my body lying on a bed. I was not shocked or frightened, it was as if I had transcended all emotion about reality. The doctors were anxiously busy as they hoped to save my life. Their expressions were full of tension and concentration. While observing the doctors, I also saw my family. They were all waiting nervously and praying for me constantly. Their eyes were filled with worry. Although I was now in a supernatural state, my emotions for the real world did not diminish. On the contrary, I felt more intense love and care. I realized the bond between myself and my loved ones and felt a deep emotional connection. Suddenly, the angel appeared beside me. His presence gave me a sense of peace. The angel told me that my body had become too exhausted and that I now needed to rest. It was time to go to another place. His voice was very gentle and made me feel very at ease. In the company of the angel, I felt that I was leaving this real world and traveling to a mysterious place. Even though I didn't know what that place was really like, the angel's words filled me with anticipation. The angel proceeded to tell me that everything was going to be okay, and that all that was needed now was to relax. The angel placed his hand on my shoulder, his palm radiating divine energy. The scene around me began to change. After a while, the scene around me became clearer and clearer. I appeared in a beautiful garden. Suddenly, I remembered that this was the place where I was born. I had returned to my hometown, I was back where I belonged. I felt intense joy and love. It is difficult for me to describe this feeling in words because it transcends the realm of what is known to man. In this realm, I became one with the universe and felt an endless wisdom and peace. I was surrounded by other souls. And I felt surprised and excited. These souls, like me, had just come into the world and a special connection was established between us. As we communicated, we realized that we were all very similar. Here, we are not limited by the laws of physics and we are free to fly through the air, just like free birds. I was excited to fly through the air and feel the flow of air. We share our experiences and feelings with each other. In this space, we have a special way of communicating. This spiritual communication brought us closer and deeper into each other. After a while, two souls joined our exchange. The first soul came here because of a car accident. On Earth, he experienced a serious car accident and tragically lost his life. After coming to this space, he was freed from his body and his soul regained its freedom. He no longer had to feel the pain of his body and instead enjoyed the freedom to fly. The second soul came here because of domestic violence. On Earth, he lived in a family full of violence and pain, and endured unbearable torment. He finally got rid of those torments and his soul was liberated. Coming here, he found understanding and support. In this pure environment, he felt an unconditional love and care, a love that allowed him to rediscover faith and hope. Here we share each other's journeys. Each soul is a unique being with its own story and feelings. Every soul is a unique being with its own extraordinary story. When I saw the huge waterfall, I was blown away by what I saw. The water was so clear and pure. The surface of the water shone with dazzling white light. In front of this beautiful waterfall, I felt a strong love. This love was so pure that it surpassed anything I had ever felt on earth. I felt completely surrounded by love, a love that was unconditional, without any pretense or bondage. As I felt the power of this love, I suddenly began to weep. In this moment, everything else ceased to matter. I suddenly realized that this was the love I had been searching for all my life on earth. This love is what my soul has been longing for. In front of this crystal waterfall, I felt like I had returned home and found my soul's home. Suddenly, a room appeared to my upper right. The walls of the room were green, which made me very curious. From the room came the sound of a group of men laughing. Curious, I walked into the room. Among the group of men, I recognized one of them. He was my deceased uncle, which surprised me. His presence warmed and reassured me. "Uncle, is that you?" I asked with some uncertainty. He smiled and nodded his head, saying gently, "Yes, it's me." I felt a familiar scent, a memory of the time I spent with him on earth. "Uncle, I miss you so much." He gently stroked my head and said comfortingly, "I've been missing you too. Don't be sad, I have always been by your side, guarding you." I went on to say, "My life on earth was difficult at times. But here, I feel very peaceful." Uncle smiled and nodded, "This is a special place, a true home for your soul. Here, you will no longer have pain or distress and can have true freedom." I looked at my uncle, my eyes filled with confusion and conflict. I told him that I felt very happy here, freeing me from pain and distress. I didn't want to leave here again, but at the same time, I had many unfulfilled dreams. Uncle gently touched my shoulder. "I know you have a lot of unfinished business and many dreams waiting to be realized. Your life's journey is not over, it has just entered a new phase. Uncle smiled and explained that this is a place of transition, where your soul needs to rest and heal. Here you can feel the endless love and serenity that will be a source of strength for you in your future journey. You can only stay here temporarily. I understand. I said softly that I should go back to fulfill my mission and realize my dream. Uncle encouraged me by saying, "You have a strong heart and a brave soul. You have to be brave to face all the challenges. Don't forget that I have been with you and guarded you throughout your journey." "Thank you, Uncle. I will remember your encouragement and love." He smiled and nodded and said, "Go back, my child. Your mission is not yet complete and the future awaits you. Wherever you are, you will not be alone, our bonds will always be connected." At the moment of parting, my uncle's eyes were filled with warmth and blessings. I felt a warmth surround me. After a while, I felt myself wrapped in soft clouds and gently landed back on the ground. In the process, I felt my soul and body gradually becoming one. I began to feel my body breathing, and each breath was like a rebirth. When my eyes opened, I saw the familiar hospital room with its medical staff. The doctors rushed over to check my vitals. I could hear their voices, but my mind was still stuck in the same space as before. Slowly, I began to feel the gravity of my body and felt myself return fully to the real world. The sensation is a gentle and slow process. I gently moved my fingers and toes to confirm that my body was functioning normally. The medical staff smiled with delight. They told me that I had experienced a major challenge and that I had managed to get through it. Under their care, I gradually regained my strength. Looking back on this experience, I know that it was a profound experience that gave me a deeper understanding of life. Although I returned to Earth, that memory and realization will remain in my heart forever. I know that it is my true home. My journey on Earth will continue, and I will use this marvelous experience to guide myself. Now, I am no longer afraid of life's challenges because I know that no matter what comes my way, I will never be alone. This experience has taught me love and forgiveness, and has made me realize the infinite possibilities of life. In my heart, my uncle is my motivation and support to move forward, and his wisdom and love will stay with me until I accomplish all my tasks.
My husband and I have been married for 39 years, and we have always lived happily ever after. We shared many joys and challenges, and had a very strong bond. Then, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer that changed our lives dramatically. We didn't give up and worked hard to try various treatments in hopes of beating the disease. We sought the advice of doctors and even considered removing one of his lungs. But the doctor was adamantly against it. The risk of such an operation was too high for someone who was already 68 years old. We felt very helpless in the face of the harsh reality, but we continued to love each other until he left this world. Our love became our motivation to overcome the difficulties. Each remaining day became so precious. The day he passed away is a day I will never forget. My husband was lying in bed. His eyes revealed a calmness. He whispered to me that he was going home and that he would see me again later. I held his hand and felt his palms grow weak. At that moment, I knew he was saying goodbye to me. His words were very hard for me, and I realized that he was about to leave this world. As his hand gradually loosened, my heart seemed to break with it. His breathing was getting weaker and weaker, and his face was gradually turning pale. I felt a sense of despair, unwilling to accept the fact that he was about to leave. That night, as I lay in bed, my heart was filled with sadness and anger. I cursed God. Why did you take my most beloved person away from me? Why did he keep us apart? My life suddenly became dark and meaningless. I didn't know how I was going to face the rest of my life. I tried to find strength and courage, but every time I thought of his departure, tears kept flowing. A month later, I was in deep grief. The loss of my husband made me unable to face the reality that I no longer ate on time or cared about my health. I used to be very exercise-oriented, but now I hardly do any outdoor activities anymore. All I wanted was to be with my husband, and my thoughts of him made me very depressed. I began to alienate my children and stopped interacting with them. Every object and corner of the house reminded me of him. My health condition gradually deteriorated, but I didn't realize that I had a health problem. Every day, I cursed God and blamed him for taking my husband away from me. After some time, I finally mustered the courage to visit my husband's grave. Though walking became a struggle, I decided to visit him because I missed him so much. As I walked there with a bouquet of flowers, I saw a man standing in front of the grave. As I approached, the person disappeared. I didn't pay much attention to it, maybe I was just hallucinating. I stood at my husband's grave and stared at the name on the headstone. I said to his grave, "Baby, I'm so sorry that this is the first time I've come to see you. I've missed you so much." I gently stroked the name on the headstone as if I could feel my husband's presence. I placed flowers on my husband's headstone. I sighed deeply. As I was getting ready to go home, I was surprised to see the man standing by the grave again. I was a little confused and then rubbed my eyes. The man's appearance was so familiar, but I couldn't identify him. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest that hurt so much that I couldn't stand up. My breathing was rapid and difficult, and my vision began to blur. I felt my body become abnormally weak, as if I was bound by some invisible force. Everything happened so suddenly that I felt very frightened and helpless. Finally, I lost consciousness and fell into darkness. In this endless darkness, I felt a kind of peace. I no longer felt pain or fear. Perhaps this is what death feels like. After a while, I saw a bright light. It swept me in like a tornado. I was pulled by an invisible force, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape its attraction. I had no idea where it was taking me. Finally, I came to another place. It was filled with a love that could not be described in words. It was a feeling I had never experienced before. In this place, I felt forgiven and accepted without any burden. This feeling taught me the true meaning of life. In this world of love, I felt connected to everything. I suddenly heard a familiar voice that turned out to be my own. I heard myself cursing God over and over again, which surprised me. I was surprised that I had said such a thing, and I was a religious person. I was born into a Christian family and attended church regularly as a child. My father was a devout Christian who taught me to be kind and forgiving. I was supposed to have a devout heart and believe in God's love and mercy. However, I couldn't help but feel remorseful and guilty when I heard myself cursing God. I didn't understand why I had said such things. In addition to these voices, I heard what I had said to my husband during an argument, and I heard what I had said to my children. These words were amplified hundreds of times. These words were uttered when I was emotionally out of control, and it shocked and shamed me. When I couldn't take it anymore, I cried out to God for forgiveness. Miraculously, the voices immediately disappeared, as if my cries had touched some kind of power. Then I found myself at the bottom of a throne. The light here was so bright. I slowly adjusted to the intense glow, before I began to see that there was a man sitting on the throne. The man was tall and stately, but I couldn't make out his face, only a vague outline. He radiated an intense energy that made me feel awe and peace. In his presence, I had no secrets to hide. He could see through all my joys and pains, all my goodness and evil. I know that he is not accusing me, but forgiving me. He understands my inner struggles and imperfections, and he is willing to accept me as I am. In his presence, I feel an unconditional love, a love that transcends time and space. He said to me, "I have heard your curse on me. I brought you here so that you could vent those resentments." When I heard this, I felt fear and embarrassment. Then I couldn't help but tell the truth. "Yes, I admit I said those things. I think you took my husband away from me. He was my life, he was everything to me, and you took that away from me." Then, the man continued, "You were right, I brought him home. His time on earth is over because he has done everything he wanted to do." This statement left me in deep thought. God explained that your husband wanted to do two things in his life: marry his soul mate and raise his children with the person he loves most. And his favorite person is me. Hearing those words touched my heart so much. Then I couldn't help but ask, "Is he here?" God answered, "Yes." This answer filled my heart with joy and anticipation. I said to God, "Can I see him again?" After a long time, I finally got my answer. God said, "You can see him again." At this moment, my emotions became mixed. There was the anticipation and joy of seeing him again, and there was also the longing and sadness of his departure. I wanted to see him again, to communicate with him, to tell him that I had been thinking about him. We passed a lake that was the clearest I had ever seen. Then we went through another pasture. Everywhere we went, every place was so beautiful. Then God also took me to a place he had prepared for others. I saw one beautiful garden after another. Each place had a unique view. Finally, we came to the place he had prepared for my husband and me. The place looked exactly like our house on earth. This familiar scene made me feel like I was back in the old days. I saw my husband watering the flowers in the garden, and he was intently busy. God whispered to me to go and talk to him. I walked over to him, and when he looked up, a look of surprise crossed his face. "Why are you here? Your time hasn't come yet," he asked. I replied, "I don't know what happened or why I'm here. I really don't know." "You can't be here yet, you have to go back," said my husband. I struggled to explain that I miss you and that life without you is meaningless. "You have to go back for the sake of our children," my husband said, hugging me. "They need you. We will meet again." He kissed me gently on the cheek. I stayed with my husband for a long time. We reminisced about the good times we had together. It felt as if we were back in time. He still told the same old jokes, just like in the past. The feeling was so familiar and warm. There we were free from any constraints, we could communicate to our heart's content and feel each other's love and warmth. There seemed to be a tacit understanding between our souls, and we could communicate with our hearts without the limitations of time and space. However, I had to leave for a while. I know that our meeting is only temporary, and we still have our respective missions. Even though we were about to part, our love would always connect us. When I awoke, I found myself passed out at my husband's grave. A janitor helped me up. He asked with concern, "Are you okay?" I replied, "Yes, I'm fine." How long had I been passed out? The administrator told me about 2 minutes. The administrator asked if I needed to call an ambulance, which I declined. I said I could walk home by myself. These past 5 years have not been easy for me. The loss of my husband has caused me a lot of mental stress and pain. Every year on my birthday, I lament the passage of time. I believe my husband has been waiting for me in heaven. His departure has not made me feel lonely, on the contrary, I feel his companionship and guardianship. I believe that in the near future, I will be reunited with him again and our souls will be reconnected. Although I miss my husband, I also realize that I need to cherish every moment of my life. I will continue to influence those around me with love and kindness. I look forward to the day when I will be reunited with my husband again. I am confident that at some point in the future, our souls will meet in heaven.